Hello everybody, Abed's brother here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the performance of some old PCs in Outriders. Outriders was developed by People Can Fly, published by Square Enix. It was released on PC April 1st, 2021. It uses the Unreal 4 engine and the DirectX 11 and 12 APIs. We'll be using DirectX 11 in this test here. And you can see the minimum and recommended specifications on screen. For the first system, we'll be using the A10770K as usual, and the FirePro W5100. And I honestly didn't have a lot of expectations for this setup in Outriders. It's 720p. We'll be at 720p, and we will be using the low preset. Because it is Unreal 4, we have the VRAM capacity on the W5100 to handle Unreal 4 games. It's just going to come down to how CPU demanding it is. And Outriders is a game with not a lot of draw distance. We get a little here, but it's a lot of linear closed-off areas. With a lot of backdrop, not really a ton of distance with a ton of NPCs. So that should help the 7870K a little bit handle all this. But you can see even here we're 70 to 80% utilization. And at 720p low, we are between 40 and 55 FPS. I'll dip to 39. I think we're going to go quite low with some of the combat, that's for sure. Oh, 25 loading in. Yeah, and as we load in new stuff, yeah, you can see the CPU is pretty much maxed for between 90 and 95 FPS percent, not FPS. The 90 and 95 FPS, I'd be like, oh, we're doing great. No, but we're talking percentage utilization on the CPU is just really, really high here. So we are under minimum recommended spec for the game, so this isn't really a surprise. This is more, well, can we get something out of this? And so 720p low, if you have a 1080p screen, the game has DLSS, but not FSR, but there is, I think there's a built-in resolution scaler. It doesn't use FSR or anything, but you should be able to scale it that way. But 720p low, it's doable here just running around, but in combat, you're going to be dipping quite a bit lower here. And I would expect, if you set a 30 FPS lock, you would probably have a pretty smooth experience. But trying to hit 60 is just not going to happen. Now, when I was doing this test, I was very over-leveled for a bunch of it. That's one way I was finishing a bunch of it up. It's also why I can get hit so often and not have to worry. For those wondering, this is a seismic bleed build that I'm doing here. It's a Devastator class, focusing on seismic skills with bleed effects. That's how I've got so much damage over time happening, and all my weapons are coded to use bleed. I think I have some life leech as well here. So that went down pretty quick. It'll go quicker in some of the other videos, because right now I'm at World Tier 9 in this video, and there are a couple places where it's going to be a little less or a little more, depending on where I was. But 30 to 50 FPS at 720p low on the A10770K, not brilliant, not great, not truly terrible, but for being under minimum spec, it's acceptable, but for getting by, but not really recommended for the best experience. Test System 2, we'll be using the i5-4590 and the R9 280X. So you saw in the previous test that, yes, we are at 900p here. And we are still on the low preset. You saw in the previous test that 720p low used about 2.2 gigs of VRAM. So 900p low is going to use between 2.5, 2.7. So that's really, really good for a GPU with 3 gigs of VRAM. I mean, and the i5-4590, big upgrade over the A1070, 870K, and we don't have a percentage utilization on the 280X because Mango HUD doesn't work properly with work all the way with GCN1 GPUs like the 280X, but I'm pretty sure we're staying fully utilized on the GPU. I mean, the FPS is really, really good. Now, the reason it's 900p and not 1080p, you're like, well, you've got pretty good FPS. Maybe maybe you could have turned the resolution up that little bit more to get 1080p instead of being at 900p. Well, the frame rate did go down quite a bit at 1080p, and Outriders is an action game. So some games I'm like, you know, 30 to 50 FPS is playable. Outriders is not one of those games. Outriders is an action game. You need that 60 FPS if possible. So 900p, we're still dipping. I saw 49 FPS there a minute ago. But Outriders is an action game. You need that 60 FPS minimum to, or at least average. We're not holding it as a minimum. But you need that 60 FPS to really have a good experience in this game. And for the most part, the 280X is getting it done. You know, you got a lot of effects on screen. We're in the jungle. That was another thing I pondered when I was going to do this test on Outriders. I chose this mission because it's easily repeatable and doesn't really give away any major plot points. It's just a side mission in the forest. And it's a very quick run and very quick to turn it in and all that. And the question was, do I want to be in the jungle or do I want to be in the desert? Because there's a desert biome later on. Or do I want to be in the, you know, the trenches? And the trenches don't really have much combat, don't have much draw distance going on at all. I mean, I could have been in a swamp too, and again, it's just like, well, there's not much foliage. So this seemed like the best compromise of graphically demanding with draw distance that I could come up with. Oop. Trying my pistols out here. We are definitely holding, we're holding right around 60 FPS, 60 to 70 FPS, and we dip under it in some big moments. I'm stuck. I'm not really seeing, I think it dipped once into the 40s, but otherwise we're staying pretty steadily around 60 to 70 with dips into the 50s. I could play the game like this. It does feel fairly smooth in the playing of it. If I had VSync on, locking the frame rate to 60, there'd probably be some issues in the big fights where it does dip under 60. But pretty good result from the R9 280X. Pretty good, but I think we can do better. Let's take a look at the FX-8320e and the R9 290. Now, the FX-8350 is one of the recommended chips for this game, so hopefully it has good optimization for AMD FX CPUs. Now, with the 290, we are at 1080p, and we are still at low. So the R9 290 should have no trouble pushing 1080p low in Outriders. So it's just going to be a question of what the FX-8320e can handle here. I can see already we got a little CPU bottleneck, not too bad. You notice the way the R9 290's utilization is bouncing around a little bit, from 100 to 90, 98%. We saw 44 there a second ago. That's usually indicative of some kind of CPU bottleneck, the way it bounces around like that. But so far, we're above 60 FPS, but I expect when we get into combat, it's gonna, we're dipping under a little bit. I am glad to have the FX chip in the test suite, because I feel like these are pretty cheap chips these days. You can probably make a pretty good, pretty affordable system with an FX 6 or 8 core FX chip. Yeah, we got some dips there. We're dipping into the 40s. If you can get a better overclock on your FX chip than I can, you're probably going to get better results. That's for sure. Yeah. Being an Unreal 4 engine game, this is, I don't think I've tested one of those in Linux yet. I mean, I've played games. Borderlands 3 is Unreal 4. Uses the Unreal 4 engine. It's actually a promising result for Unreal 4 games. I still say, if you're going to use Linux, I still prefer the Haswell chips. They just seem like they handle these older games and older CPUs so much better. But haven't really... I think the last game we saw that the FX chip actually did well in was Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. It did really well in that game. The whole system. But here... I feel like the i5-4590 and R9 280X was punching above its weight. It was basically performing better than I expected. And the FX chip plus the R9 290, it's underperforming a little bit, I think. I don't know. Now that we're in a big combat against the boss, now you see we're still dipping to low 50s. I would not expect that from the R9 290, even at 1080p low. Because it is low settings. There's effects going on, but it's not like we've got tons and tons of draw distance. We do have a lot of enemies on screen, though. The game's handling that logic pretty well, but we're not going over 60% utilization on the CPU, so you could probably get this kind of performance from a 6-core, like an FX-8320. And 6 cores, since they have one less module on there, you might be able to cool them a little better and overclock them a little higher than trying to push an 8-core chip to its max.
You sure made me work for it.
Pretty good performance from the FX-8320e and R9 290. Still a little lacking in the CPU department. Let's see what we can get out of the i7-4790 and the Radeon RX 480. Now this one I expect good things from. I do. I expect good things from this system. This is basically a system very capable of punching well above its weight. So now we are at 1080p still, but we are at the medium preset. We got the VRAM. We got the Intel Haswell cores and threads. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so out of combat, running through the jungle. We are about 60 to 70 FPS. Those extra 4 threads on the 4790 really help spread the load around. I am the original owner of the i5-4590 in this test, and it's been a great chip for me, but 4 threads, if you're going to try to push the hardware beyond what was out when it came out, you know, if you're going to try to push the hardware and make it last longer, you definitely need the 8 CPU threads. So the 4790 is definitely the bargain chip. Okay, let's see what we do here. Okay, a little bit of stutter there. Staying more consistently above 60 FPS. When we dip, we're not dipping as low as the others. Surprising. I didn't think Outriders was that demanding. Really. But Unreal 4, I guess. make quick work. And yes, there is an edit here in the benchmark run. That's because there are actually 2 more combat arenas between the first one and the boss, and there's literally nothing extra about either of them. They're just 2 more combat arenas. Well, it's looking like we're going to need to push this game up into the stratosphere. We're probably going to need a little bit more from the CPU.
Sit still.
Yeah, we're still doing... Oh, shotgun time. We're still doing... We're still dipping under 60 FPS in the big fight. Now, granted, there's a lot going on, and we're at the medium preset here. Okay, he's being very aggressive. Okay, yeah, we're still dipping under 60. That's disappointing. Not using a ton of VRAM, only using 3.8 to 4 gigs of VRAM. And CPU utilization isn't high, so that tells me we probably gonna do better with the 5930K just because we have more L3 cache. I wonder if this is a cache-heavy type of thing. That's disappointing. I expected better from this. So far, the i5-4590 and R9 280X has performed the best out of the lot, relative to my expectations, of course. But let's see what the i7-5930K and Vega 64 can do. But this time we will, of course, be kicking the resolution up a little bit higher. We're going to be at 1440p, because, let's face it, that's really what Vega was designed for. 1440p medium. And let's see what we got. Okay, now we're up a lot higher here. 80 to 90 FPS out of combat. This is already looking a lot better. So it's got to be an a level 3 cache thing, because I believe the i7-4790 has 8 megabytes of L3 cache, and the 5930K, which is Haswell E, has like 16 megabytes of L3 cache. I think it's almost double, or it's something like 15.3 or something. It's basically double. But yeah, 1440p, medium preset, and we are doing a lot better, and I don't think it's just the Vega 64. Let's see what we get of dip here. Yeah, we're staying above 60. It dipped to 65 there. Oh, I saw 57 briefly. Yeah. So I guess this likes level 3 cache? Outriders, I mean. Not something I had really considered. Usually we just, I just look at a CPU and I'm like, oh, let's look at the, what kind of throughput, what kind of multi-threaded tasks perform, because, I mean, really, once you get with these older CPUs and they don't have as many cores or threads, multi-thread performance becomes very important. But, Vega 64 definitely getting it done. 5930K definitely getting it done. I'd feel pretty confident recommending this system, saying this is a great old system to play this game on. But I mean, it is Unreal 4, so it is kind of demanding. Unreal 4 was notoriously problematic back in its day. A lot of people, you know, when it came out, they complained about a lot of texture streaming issues and things like that. Kind of like they do about Unreal 5. Stutter and all that stuff. most of my experience with Unreal 4 was related to Borderlands and Borderlands 3. Outriders generally perform pretty well for me on my main rig. I didn't really notice any kind of issues like people complain about. And here on lower spec systems running Linux, I didn't really see much stutter issues except in the A1070, 870K, which is obviously CPU bottlenecked. Most of the time, the game just ran like this for me. Yeah, you get a few dips here and there, but pretty smooth otherwise. Pretty good from Vega 64. Very impressive. Definitely recommend a 1440p medium on the Vega 64 system. So now we have the Ryzen 5 5500 and the Intel Arc A770. So the question is, how well does it perform? Does it perform better than the Vega? And the answer is yes, it does. So we're going to be at 1440p, but we are going to be at the high preset. So it actually performed well enough that I was able to use 1440p high. Actually, I tested this in reverse order. This was the first one I tested, and 1440p high, I was like, oh, okay. But then I went and did the Vega, and Vega could not hold 60 FPS at 1440p high. I had to drop it to medium. So the Arc is definitely ahead here of Vega. But something to keep in mind, I said in a recent video, one of my recent videos, I was like, oh, you know, the ASRock Phantom A770 is like a great GPU. It's never gone over 70 degrees or 72 degrees or something. Outriders actually made this GPU cook. You're going to see the GPU temperature go up. And if you look at the power draw figure on the A770, you can see we're drawing between 180 and 210 watts on a GPU that has a power limit of, I think, 225. So the A770 is being fully utilized by this game. This is, it's definitely heating it up. In fact, for the next test, I actually had to take the side panel off. It was getting very, very warm, and I didn't want anything to overheat. So air circulation becomes very important with this game and Arc, because this one will heat it up. Oh yes, and if this seems like it's taking a little bit longer, this is at World Tier 11. You can see it across the top there. All my grinding and running this mission over and over, I did level up my world level. So we are staying over 60 FPS pretty much the entire time, and it feels very smooth to play. So. Very good one from Intel here. The A770, you know, the line on the A770 basically at this point is, when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. But when it works, it usually works quite well. And this is definitely one of those occasions where the A770 is working very well. 1440p high, and we are staying over 60 almost the entire time. But this is what I was talking about when I said, you know, if you want to lock 60 FPS, you need to get between 80 and 90 FPS to take into account any frame drops. And we're staying between 70 and 80, so we might dip under 60 once or twice, but look at that frame time graph. Very flat. Ah, I think I'm trapped in a corner. Yeah, this is definitely taking a little longer than the other ones because of the higher world tier. Hopefully you don't mind. Gives Arc another chance to, a longer chance to show what it can do. Everybody is spitting acid at me. Okay, I think I got him. Let's mop up. Very good performance from the Intel A770 at 1440p high. Now, when I get a game that can play well at a 1440p high, I'm going to try 4K, but turn the preset down 2 notches. If I can turn the preset down twice, I'll try 4K. So we're going to go from 1440p high to 4K low and see how we do here. So here's 4K. And we have no VSync on, no frame limit. It's important to remember that for this particular one, but we are at the low preset. And it's important to remember because you would think at 4K the A770 would be fully utilized, and it's not. We're going to be around 85 to 92% utilization for most of the 4K run. That is not a CPU bottleneck. We just ran through 1440p high with no problems. This is not a CPU bottleneck. This has to be the Arc driver. Something at 4K is preventing it from being fully actualized, realized, utilized, whatever you want to call it. But this has to be a driver issue. And I have no idea what that could be. I know there's something funny that goes on with the HDMI on these cards, on the A770. I know they don't have HDMI 2.1, it's 2.0. I think there was something something funny with I know to get like 4K 120 hertz experience on some Intel Arc cards. I know there was something where they had to like put the visual signal through some kind of converter. They would take the display, it would be a DisplayPort signal that would basically be converted to HDMI. I don't know if that's what's happening here. I'm just throwing stuff out here. But you can see we can't hold 60 FPS at 4K low. We're between 50 and 60 here, but the GPU is not fully utilized. Would that, do we need a higher clock on the CPU? Do we need, I don't know, faster single core speed, something? We are using the power. The GPU is using about 210 watts, so it's definitely getting used. But utilization is only showing 90%. I find this very, very odd. Unless it's just the utilization is a bogus metric. I don't think it is.
You are. Sit still for me.
But I feel like there's oh, got stuck. I feel like there's additional performance here that could put us just over 60 FPS or right around it. But you see, we're spending a lot of time around 52 to 55 FPS. Is another 10% performance going to be enough to get us up there? I think we're still going to be dipping under 60 FPS. So 4K, a little bit disappointing here. It could be my setup. It could be something in the driver. I'm not exactly sure. If you have any ideas about this, drop them in the comments below and let me know. Maybe there's something I can do to try to not have this issue in future. I have no idea. Yeah, definitely a little bit disappointing there. And we're still about 90% utilized while getting the 50 to 60 FPS. Very odd. Never seen that before, where 4K actually results in less GPU utilization.
You sure made me work for it. Juno will want to see your head.
That's just bizarre to me. Yeah. So for the for this particular test of Outriders here, the A1070, 870K, and W5100 were under recommended minimum recommended specs, so the lack of performance there wasn't really a surprise. The i5-4590 R9 280X at 900p, that definitely seemed like that was the most impressive performance of the bunch. The FX-8320e doing its CPU bottlenecking thing. i7-4790 not really getting it done with the RX 480. But the Vega 64 and i7-5930K really delivered at 1440p medium, so maybe Outriders just liked level 3 cache. And then the Arc A770 performed well at 1440p high, but had weird utilization issues at 4K. So kind of a mixed bag on this one. Definitely a game that's very playable on Linux, which is good for a multiplayer title like Outriders, 4-player co-op PvE. Definitely one worth checking out if you're looking for a cooperative looter shooter on Linux and you're tired of Borderlands. That's all I got for you today. Hope this video was useful to you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.